Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about how to properly join rows. I had a couple questions about some confusion with joining joined rows. And so I wanted to do a quick video to clear it up. Mostly all of my patterns, I work the same. I begin the row by chaining and then working into the same stitch. And let me show you how that's done. I'm going to show you how to join again in a second. But when I'm starting out a row, I chain one and then I always work into that first stitch. You can see the V stitch of the previous round and the two loops that kind of go diagonally to the right. That's the top of that stitch. So I'm going to actually work into that same stitch. Now some patterns will not work into that stitch, and instead they will chain one or two, skip that stitch, and then work into the next stitch. Either way is totally fine because you can see that it kind of looks like a stitch when you've chained and then worked into the next one. But when you join, you need to make sure that you are joining into the chain and not into the first stitch. So again, if you've worked the first stitch into the next stitch, this chain will count as the first stitch. And the pattern will indicate whether the chain counts or whether it doesn't count. I actually prefer to not count it simply because I don't like that hole there. I think that it doesn't really look like a stitch to me, and so I prefer to chain one and then work that stitch in the same stitch as the chain when I'm starting out my row. So whether you work that first stitch or not will kind of change how the end of the round looks. But for this video, and because almost all my patterns, I work the first stitch in the same stitch as the chain, I'm going to explain how we do that. So we've come all the way around. You can see here that we have a couple things going on. This, I'm going to just kind of dissect apart what exactly is happening here. So we have this stitch right here. When you get to the end of the round, you're going to have what kind of looks like a square. So you have this part is the slip stitch, the join from the previous round. This stitch is the chain one from the previous round, and this stitch is the first stitch of the round. So you can see that V. These are the stitches that go along with that stitch. So that doesn't count and that doesn't count because that is a chain. This can be, or is a slip stitch. That can be confusing because it looks like there's one more chain. But what we can do is look below and see, okay, these loops don't have a corresponding V stitch under them. So I know that's not a stitch. So to join, I'm gonna insert my hook, yarn over, and then pull through all the loops. So that gives us what appears to be a stitch, and it technically is a stitch. It's a slip stitch, but it doesn't count when we're joining rows because we're only counting the stitches that give us height. We're only counting the single crochet stitches. This is simply a way to weld the beginning and the end together. And this is just a little bit confusing because I did work a foundation single crochet, and so I'm going to work one more round and we can look how this looks again with the completed row. Okay, so here's our completed next row. So if we look, we're focusing on the V with the two loops on top. We see that we have one more stitch to complete the row. And I'm explaining this to you so that you don't need to count. You can just observe what your piece looks like to know whether you have worked enough stitches. So we've worked into that final stitch. And again, we have this corner that we're going to work in neither of those stitches because they constitute the join from the previous row and the chain one from the beginning of the row. So we have this corner here. We're not going to work in either of those. We're going to join in the top loops of the first stitch. That is how you join when you have worked a single crochet in the same stitch as the chain. Now it's going to look a little bit different if you have not worked in that first stitch and you are counting the chain as a stitch. So I'm going to work around, so I'm going to chain one and then work into the next stitch, and this is around where the chain would count as a stitch. So I'm going to work this round and come back to it so that you can see that the joining of this row is going to be just very slightly different. Okay, so we've worked another round, and this time we did not work the chain in the first stitch. So this is where you have to just remember what you have done so you know where to work. So for this one, because we are counting the chain, we will not have that corner. We still will not be working into that slip stitch. The slip stitch is going to kind of form a seam. You can see those horizontal lines going up, which is the joins of all the rounds. So we won't ever work in the slip stitch, but because we did not count the chain, that is where we're going to be working. So you're going to put your hook under the 2 loops of the chain, and you're going to join that way. So it doesn't really matter whether, it's really a matter of preference. So if you prefer, like I do, to work that first stitch in the same stitch as the chain, that's totally fine. Or if you prefer to not work it and you prefer to count the chain as a stitch, both of those methods are totally fine and they're great. They're perfect for whatever project you're working on. However, you simply need to remember to join in the first stitch so that you can make sure that your stitch count is correct and consistent. So just remember that if you have worked, like for these 2 rows, if you worked the first single crochet in the same as the chain, you would need to join in the 2 loops at the top of the stitch. If you count the chain as a stitch, you need to join with the chain. So I hope that that makes sense. Please let me know if you have any questions about how to join, and I will add some more information to this video. I hope that you found this tip useful, and happy crocheting!